Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the issue of settler colonialism in a multipolar world. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and let's talk a little bit about Israel in a broad perspective, not a perspective of morality, right or wrong, good or bad, just a perspective of where this country fits in a changing world and the possibility that the issue here when it comes to what's going on with Israel is that the world is changing and that the political model, the colonial political model of Israel is no longer valid in the world that we live in today. So let's start here. It is what? Settler colonialism, right? You come in, there's people there. It's Australia, it's, any number of places. It is Canada, the US, on and on and on. You come there and there's people there, and people want whatever is there. And there are two options for the people that are there. Usually, if you go there, it's because they're outgunned. It is a law of the jungle. Settler colonialism is kind of a law of the jungle kind of thing. It is, by its very nature, brutal. It is a theft of resources, and the resources can even be labor, such as how did I get here? How did people like me get here, right? It was a theft of resources of labor from that land, right? So it is going to a place. Now, there's a traditional there are various kinds of colonialism. And this is not like some course that I took or some book I read on colonialism. This is my own view of it. This is Garland Nixon on colonialism. A couple of things. Number one, there is, of course, settler colonialism, where you come in and you displace the people in the land. You take their land. Hey, we need more land, and you got it. And we need the things you have on this land, and we're going to take it. And of course, they're either subjected to some merciless, you shove them into, whether it's concentration camps, reservations, whatever you want to call it. And then you flood your people in and you take over their land and they live there. That's a traditional settler colonialism. Now, there are other forms of colonialism, such as what the British would do. They'd come in and they would put in a small government. They would, of course, rule very brutally. Oftentimes, what they would do is they would somewhat enslave the population, and they'd say, you guys grow tea, rice, spices, whatever it is. We're going to make you still grow that, but we're going to sell it on the world market and we're going to keep the profits, right? Now, keep in mind something. With that kind of colonialism, even then, even when the British did that, the British peasants didn't benefit. The British populace didn't benefit. Even then, it was an oligarchy. And that, whatever, be it the East India Tea Company or whatever it is, the money that was pilfered, that was stolen, that was pirated using various forms of British colonialism still only stood or remained in the hands of a few oligarchs. So that's another thing to understand about colonialism. Colonialism, per se, isn't something where, hey, let's go, like 5 guys rob a bank and they split the money up 5 ways. And maybe the guy who came up with the idea gets the biggest chunk or something like that. Nope. It is the oligarchs have ships full of soldiers. Now that's where the peasants and the poor people come in. You get to be the soldiers. They go over there. You get to fight the natives in another country. You get to die. You get to be soldiers. You get to fight the wars and the battles valiantly, and you get memorials in your name and flags and all those kind of things, but you get to die. And the oligarchs get to keep all the money from the tea or the spices or the gold or the silver or whatever they're able to pilfer, right? Okay. Now, settler colonialism, you displace the people, you put your people in. You have a traditional colonialism where you put a what we would call a minority government. So you'll have the British government, a small group of Brits that rule India, and you pilfer the resources, right? And you rule it very, very brutally. And you're able to find some traders in the populace, and those traders are bribed and they benefit somewhat, and so they are very important to the cause. But you keep the people there and you work them like dogs and you steal their stuff, right? That's another form of colonialism. And even in settler colonialism, sometimes that's used too. But so you got a governor or a viceroy who's a Brit, and he rules over this territory. Now, one of the things that you had to understand about when the British when they did that was, by its very nature, that kind of colonialism, you got the worst leaders, the worst rulers, politicians in those particular colonies. Because one of the things that happened was, if you had a nobleman in England and he had a son that was a ne'er-do-well, and he was just embarrassing himself in London and making a monkey out of himself and making a fool out of himself and embarrassing his father would then send him away to one of these colonies to be one of the leaders there, right? So they would take, so effectively these colonies were kakistocracies, in meaning that the most corrupt and inept rulers were inept people became the rulers, right? The most corrupt. And they did the same thing there. They'd find traitors, the most, inept and corrupt people they could find in that society, to be part of the ruling elite there. So that was a traditional colonialism there. Right now, I think the Americans, people look at America and say it was never colonial, right? This was not a colonial thing, right? This was not a colonial power. Yeah, it really is, in a way. America does have some colonies. America still has Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then, on and on. You can find places in Guam, and you can find places around the world that are still U.S. territories, that are U.S. colonies. And I would say this: if you really want to understand the United States, you need to go to its colonies. If you want to understand colonialism, go to these colonies today, and you'll see it. If you want to go to the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, which I've been to, you'll see pure colonialism there, right? What you'll see is, go online and search for the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands, and what you'll find is, online, it's extremely corrupt. That's the first thing you'll see. And with most of these, like Caribbean countries, you'll see that the governments are all corrupt. Now, don't you think that if I can go online and read that the U.S. Virgin Islands government is corrupt, that the U.S. government knows it, and they could clean up that corruption if they want to? That yes, and yes, they do. They do know it, and yes, they could. However, they don't, because that is the intent, right? The intent is put a bunch of corrupt people in charge of it, and then steal everything that's not nailed down on the islands, and go there and if they steal the nails, right? It is, if you go there, what you'll find out, and this is important in the context of Israel, what you'll find out is, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, that all of these ships come in, all of these tourists come in, all of this money comes in. There's a bunch of people on the island that are descendants of slaves. They used to have sugar plantations and things like that on the island, rum, things like that, that went back to Europe. They had slaves. So now the descendants of those slaves are on the U.S. Virgin Islands. All of this money, billions, come into the Virgin Islands. They don't get any of it. They get to work, they get to sweep floors, they get to serve ice cream, they get to do the most menial jobs, and they got much of nothing. They don't benefit. Billions come in, and those billions go back to London and go back to New York, etc. So basically, when you go to the islands, you'll find, if you go throughout the Caribbean, billions of dollars coming into these islands, but the people, the indigenous people, or the descendants of slaves that lives on the islands, they don't get any of it. They get to be the peasant workers. They get to struggle, barely make ends meet. And then all of this money that comes into these islands goes straight back to maybe the Dutch, maybe the Brits, maybe whoever. Aruba is the Dutch, whoever it is. The money comes through those islands and is extracted by the colonial powers. So you can clearly see that kind of colonialism there. And here's the thing about that kind of colonialism. That's a colonialism that really grew after, say, World War II. In that region, when a lot of people were struggling for power, and as they say, they gave them the flag, but no independence. They wanted independence. Okay, we'll have a flag, but what we'll do now, instead of having a viceroy and a governor there, we'll find some puppets, some corrupt puppets in your own country, and some traitors, and we'll put them in charge, and they'll do the same thing that would happen if we had traitors, if we had our viceroys or governors. So we still own the place. We just put a corrupt government inside and steal everything just like we did before. So you now have the appearance. You got a flag. You got the appearance. We tell you that you're free and all, but you're not. And you're not benefiting from your resources, which if you're in the Caribbean, your resources are you're in the Caribbean and you got beautiful white sands and turquoise seas and great weather, but you don't get the benefit from that. Sorry, that all goes back to Brussels or wherever the hell it goes, right? New York, London. Now, you got US. Now we're talking about different kind of colonialism. And one of the things that is important to understand is some of these forms kind of more developed after World War II, after people started fighting. The more they fought for colonialism, the more the colonialists had to find a way to pretend to give them power without giving them power, things of that nature, right? Okay, and where do we get to Israel? One of the things the U.S. really worked on was being a colonial power without the appearance of being a colonial power, right? We don't want to seem like we're a colonial power. We want to say to the American people as a government that we're about freedom and independence and sovereignty and democracy and all that. So in order to do that, we have to hide that we're a colonial power. So when we put puppets in charge, we got to pretend like we don't. Now, to say you're not a colonial power, but you got 900 bases around the world, what are those bases for? As a rule, even the countries where we have bases, we control the governments, we control the levers of power, we control the economic power in those countries. And might I add, our bases are bases of occupation. Hello, Germany. Hello, Japan. Hello, South Korea. They're bases of occupation, but we say they're there to protect you. And since we're saying they're there to protect you, we've got to have somebody in the area that we say we're protecting you from. What the hell good is it to have a bunch of, how can we justify a bunch of bases in South Korea if we don't have a North Korean boogeyman? Japan, if we don't have a North Korean or a Chinese boogeyman? How do we justify Europe being loaded with bases if we don't say the Russians are coming? Now, if you notice what the Trump people are doing is they're saying, the Russians ain't coming anymore. Why? Because we want to move these bases. That's all. The Russians coming? Nah. Why? Because we want to take these bases and put them over by China so we can threaten China. That's all it is. We want to take these bases and put them in South America so we can dominate South America. We've decided we want to dominate. China is too big a power, and we've got to do two things. A, we've got to dominate China in its own region and threaten them. And B, we got to hurt China by not allowing them to dominate or to economically inculcate themselves into the Western Hemisphere, which is already too late, right? It's already too late. They already have, but just like everything else the U.S. is doing to fight against modernity, as when people fight against modernity, it's always too late. They always see what happened and they try to react to the last thing that happened, but it's already happened. So at any rate, so think about what I'm saying. The days when you can just go, what are you going to do? Well, we've decided that there's the new world. We're going to go over there and there's people there. What are you going to do? Well, we'll just put them in concentration camps or whatever you want to call it, and we'll steal their stuff. You just can't get away with that anymore. You have to lie to the people. You have to tell them something else. Oh, no, we're bringing democracy. We're going back for our oil because they stole our oil and our land in their land. Our oil is under their land, but it's our land. You guys just got to lie to the American people out of desperation and convince the American people that thievery is not thievery, that piracy is not piracy, that theft is not theft. It's benevolence. What are you doing? We're there to look out for the people and free them from a dictator. You notice they're not doing much. They're not using the dictator stuff in Venezuela. And you know why they're not? For this reason. Because the Venezuelans have armed their people, millions. The Venezuelans have given out millions of arms to the Venezuelan people, and the Venezuelan people are ready to fight. Now, how can you say that Maduro is a dictator if he's arming his people? What the hell kind of dictator is going to give guns? What a vicious, abusive dictator is going to give his people guns? Because they're going to point them back at him. The very nature of the dynamics in Venezuela that the government is arming the people implies that they're going to be pointing those guns in the same direction as the government is. So you can't use he's a brutal dictator and we must free the people from the brutal dictator, because the people are armed and they'll fight right alongside the brutal dictator. So they don't really use that. So it's drugs. I mean, oil. I mean, drugs again. I mean, no, wait a minute. I mean, they stole our land and oil. I mean, China, something's got a ship. It makes no sense. It's from one thing to the next. Okay. Now, that being said, let's do all of that, right? And let's take that back to Israel. Israel is old school, 1600s, brutal, Columbus, um, uh, uh, genocidal, um, settler colonialism. That's what it is. It is old school settler colonialism. It is the old thing. It ain't pretty. When the Spanish would go to some island and they'd, slaughter people, kill them, enslave them, the Brits, the whoever, the Dutch, where they go to some island or some area and they would just slaughter the people or enslave them, kill them, do whatever, right? It wasn't pretty back then. But hell, it wasn't pretty at home. They were fighting each other in religious wars, and all the colonial powers were always a disaster. I mean, think about it. Think about it. Right now, France, Germany, and the UK, the leadership of those countries is so corrupt, is so uncivilized, that if they ain't fighting the Russians, you can't stop them from fighting themselves. Think about World War One, two, whatever. If these bastards ain't fighting the Russians, they're so the leadership, the nobility in those countries, the elite in those countries are so uncivilized, they can fight somebody. They're like animals. They can't stop fighting. So what did you see recently? The Poles are saying, well, the Germans are doing this. The Poles and the Germans might fight it out. They're like, well, hey, you're going to fight the Russians? Damn it, they got nukes and stuff like that, and we can't really beat the Russians. Okay, well, who are we going to fight? I don't know. The Germans. How about the French? They look, I love baguettes. Let's go attack the French and we'll steal all their baguettes. The ruling elite in these countries are friggin' animals. They are uncivilized people. And they what they got to do is find a reason to throw hundreds of thousands of peasants against other hundreds of thousands of peasants. And you know what's on both ends of a bayonet? A working class guy. And they're not happy unless they got the working class slaughtering each other. So at any rate, that's what Europe wants to do, but we have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, Houston, we have a problem. And the problem is this. The world is changing. The multipolar world is a civilization of the world. It is the East and the South, people who want a civilized manner of trade, not theft, not piracy, right? Not I'm going to take your stuff because I got bigger guns than you. Russia and China, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're not perfect, but they aren't overthrowing governments. They're making a deal and they're selling stuff and they're wheeling and dealing, right? They're not. Look what the British have done, the French have done, the US have done. They're not saying we're going to go in and we're going to kill your leaders, slaughter your people, and put some CIA puppet in charge. They're saying, let's make a deal. Okay? And here sits Israel in the midst of that. Here sits this throwback to 1712. This throwback in a world where people can go online and see what's going on in seconds, whether it's, I don't know, X, Telegram, whatever the hell, emailing each other, you name it, websites, you name it. People can go online and find out what the hell is going on. And now, when they look around and they expect, see, they've been lied to by their leaders in the West. Their leaders in the West have told us that they're civilized. They've told us that they're here to promote democracy and all these good things, right? So they've pretended to be the good guys. Israel exposes that they ain't. Israel exposes that these people haven't changed since the 1700s. We've changed. We expect something different. They've got better at lying to us to tell us that there's something different. Now, don't get me wrong. You still have these ignorant schlubs going around here believing that crap. And I'll say this, the liberal class has been exposed. The liberal class has been exposed that they're willing to either believe these lies, like they can't possibly admit that their governments are a bunch of pirates, cutthroat scallywags, in the scourge of the earth. They can't accept that because they've been supporting them all these years doing this crap, and so they can't get off the train. Then you got a bunch of conservatives who call themselves patriotic, and so and their version of patriotism is a mindless, brain-dead version of patriotism that says anything my government does is right. My government did it, so it's right. We stand with Israel. Why? They're tribalist kind of people. Our group does this. We as a group believe this. And when our leader says this, we follow our leaders. And we as a group, I would say the paradox is that people like that call themselves individualists, right? You know, they're like, I'm about individualism. I'm all about individualism. But when you ask themselves where do they get their identity, they get their identity from their group. Oh, we're fill in the blank. I'm a white, I'm a Westerner. You had these, what was this group called? I forgot the name of it, a bunch of schlubs, but they were right wing and they were going around singing, the West is the best, right? Well, wait a minute. We're Americans and we're better than you. We're Brits and we're better than you are. We're Christians and we're better than you. We're whatever and we're better than you. And this is the contradiction that says, I am an individualist. I'm a radical individualist. Really, where do you get your identity? I'm a white Christian male, whatever. So you call yourself an individualist, but you retain your identity as a member of the group. Look, then admit to you're a member of the group. You know, one thing I say about the Russians, they don't pretend about that individualist crap. I go to Russia. They're like, I am a Russian. I am a Orthodox Christian. And that's what they're proud of. They don't pretend a bunch of individualist stuff. I'm a Russian. I'm Orthodox Christian. You can like it or not, but I'm proud of it, and I will fight to defend it. My the motherland. I will fight to defend my religion and my people. They're not playing the game where they have to have a contradiction. I am a rugged individualist, but I retain my individuality. I mean, my identity from a group. There's a contradiction, right? Okay. Now, let me say this. That's not to say there's anything wrong with being a member of a group, or not wrong with being a group, or not wrong with being an individual. In fact, you are an individual. Paul Robeson Jr., you actually used to always use this term. This is a term he used a lot that I've learned to find that the older I get, the more I use it. Healthy balance. Healthy balance. A healthy balance between being an individual person and pursuing your life the way you want to, and saying, I have the right as a person to say what I want, and to say no to what I want, and to say I will not comply. But to understand that I'm a member of, how many groups am I a member of? As many as I can think. Well, Garland named some groups: a father, a male, a brother. I could go on and on. These are all categories that you could throw me in. He's a black person. He's an American. He's an old guy. He's a young guy. He's a tall guy. He's a short guy. There's a straight person. There's a gay person. There's a this. There's a that. We can use as many words as we can think of. We can use to place people into groups, because we put them in groups with words. But the bottom line is this: where do they truly get their identity from? Where do they feel or believe they get their identity from? That's up to each person. But don't pretend to be a rugged individualist. At the same time, you argue, but I'm a member, I'm superior to people because I'm a member of a particular group. Anyway, that again gets us back to Israel. It gets us back to Israel because what we're looking at is this: a pure old school settler colonialism in the most brutal way you can imagine. Pure brutality. It is, we're the people who, they even call themselves the settlers. Yes, Israeli settlers. It implies you're settling the land. It implies the land is in an uproar and you're going to settle it down, that you're going to calm things down, right? That's to settle, is to calm things down. There's a puddle of water, a muddy water. And when all of the mud settles to the bottom, it's clear and you can see through. But let me ask you something. If a muddy puddle is full of mud, how do you settle it? How do you clear all of that mud out? Here's the truth about nature. You know how you settle it? You leave it alone. The way to settle things is leave them alone. And Mother Nature perfectly knows how to settle that. The heavier things will go to the bottom, the water will clear up. Okay? So to truly be a settler, it's not that you settle things, things are allowed to settle. So if I want something to settle, the only way to do it is leave it alone and see how Mother Nature settles it. If I come in and start forcing something on that puddle, on that land, that's not settling the pond or water puddle or whatever it is. That's not settling it. I can use that language, but the only way that puddle ever settles is if I walk away and come back later and look at it. And everything will naturally, that's heavy, the settlement will fall to the bottom. Okay. So the fact of the matter is, these people aren't settlers. They're the opposite of settlers. They're agents of chaos. And that's easily seen. Now, here's the problem. Also, in this day and age, with maintaining a settler colony in a time period where people can access information and they can see the brutality that is necessary to maintain a settler colony, right? They can see the brute that it is necessary. One of two things can happen to the people in a settler colony. You can either kill them all or you can subjugate them. And if they refuse to be subjugated, then you're going to probably try to kill them all. And as we look at what's happening, that's it. It's either they're saying, oh, Hamas is going to have to disarm Hezbollah. Everybody's got to disarm except Israel. Why? Well, we've already seen that. What happened when the Syria gave up their poison gas? They did a false flag and accused them of using poison gas anyway. What happened when Saddam gave up his poison gas and stuff? They attacked him. What happened when Libya gave up his nuclear program? They attacked him and killed him. You know who didn't? The North Koreans. And you know who didn't get attacked? The North Koreans, because they understand the colonialism. They understand it. They see it for the monster that it is. So they're not going to drop their weapons. Just drop your weapons. You can trust me. I won't shoot you. Yeah, you will. Everybody that you told to drop their weapons, as soon as they dropped them, you shot them. Yeah, but that's all in the past. I'm a new man. No, you're not. And I'm not dropping my weapons. That's North Koreans. And they're doing, they're starting to really, really do pretty good because of their alliance with Russia. Now, as I said, we can look at Israel and say the world in this day and age, you can't, for instance, back in the 1700s, you could send a bunch of ships to another area. You could slaughter a bunch of people. The people back in your home would never know what you did. Hey, look, we came back with ships full of spice. Oh, wonderful. I'll put some in my soup. They didn't know that the spice was soaked in blood. They didn't know that these things coming back from these new lands were soaked in blood. That they were trying to get a piece of the pie. They didn't know how many bodies were baked into the pie. They couldn't see it. Now it's very difficult to do settler colonialism because people get to see the bodies that are baked into the pie, and there's no way you can make that pie without putting bodies in it. And now the other part of it is this. Back then, you had a bunch of guns and ships, and they had bows and arrows. Well, ask the Houthis how that works out, and look at Hamas and look at Hezbollah. They have some, even though it's limited, they have some modern weaponry, and they are able to exact their revenge on their invaders. They're able to fight. And now, if you'll notice, the only thing settler colonialism is capable of now is the only thing it's ever been capable of: mass slaughter of civilians. That's the game. So now what you have is this. Think about it. The problem is you have the comparison. You have people looking at various types of colonialism where they pretend to go, whatever, to countries to bring them democracy or whatever. And people are suspect of that now. But then when they see true old school 1600 settler colonialism, they are aghast. And when they see the attitudes of true 1600 mentality settler colonialists, they are aghast. They're like, holy crap. As they're doing, you're slaughtering people. And the fact of the matter is this: the ruling elite never changed. The ruling elite never changed. They told us, oh yeah, about slavery and killing of indigenous people and wiping out the people in Australia, Canada, wherever. That was a long time ago. That's the past. I mean, my God, things were barbaric then. That was before the Enlightenment that we have today. But we're totally different now. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore. It's we just don't even want to think about it. It's so evil. That's what the ruling elite says until they're challenged. Until they're challenged, or until they need to, until they want something, then they go right out there. But the difference is now they can go slaughter a bunch of people in Iraq. They can give us all kinds of propaganda and lies and hide it. But now we have this, and we got access instantly to all of these things. So they can still do settler colonialism, the most brutal politics on earth, but they just can't hide it. So now the people look at it and they just say, oh my God, what am I looking at? and they see them burning children alive. They see them bombing. The information comes out. The people who are being attacked, the indigenous people, have access to all manners of technical um, uh, um, television and radio and internet and you name it. So they get all the information out. And once it gets out, you have people like me all over the place, Rumble and Rockfin and you name it. So now you have people now who can spread, or just people that are just tweeting and retweeting or whatever you want to call it, telegramming, you name it. So they can't hide it. And it is brutal, and it is vicious, and it is evil, and it is genocidal. So the problem we have now is that if you look around the world, there's all kinds of terrible things going on, but they're able to hide a lot of them. But the true old school settler colonialism, where it's not like you go in and you just try to corrupt the people in charge and get a bunch of traitors to control things. Sure, they're doing that too. But you go in with the, what's the old saying? You can use the velvet glove or the iron fist. You go in with the iron fist and you kill everything that moves. And you justify those people are a threat to us. Why? What are they doing? Yeah, something. They're terrorists. They're, you name it. They're a threat to us. And people see, they look at Israel and they see a bunch of Israelis going to like a barbecue, looking on this side of the fence and looking on the other side of the fence, watching bombs drop on men, women, and children. They look over there and they see starvation and they're like, yay, give me another steak. And they celebrate starvation. And people look at the Israelis and they look at the mentality of the Israelis. And once again, they're aghast. They're like, are these people truly human? You know, they look and they say, these people are not civilized in the way that I understand civilization. Are they industrialized? Sure. And now what people in the West are learning is the difference between an industrialized country and a civilized country. An industrialized country does not mean that it's civilized. And in these instances, they're seeing Israel and they're seeing what they're doing and they're understanding, oh my God, so this is what we've been supporting all along. And it's causing them to ask further questions. Once a person is broken free from the matrix, they got a lot of questions on their mind. Once their mind is freed from this trap of propaganda, they got a lot of questions. And then they start looking back and they start saying, holy crap, the people in Vietnam really did have a right to say we want to choose the way that we govern our own country. The people in Afghanistan, the country after country, and they start saying, wait a minute, we've been doing this for a long time. And they start questioning their government. And what happens? Does the government say, uh-oh, we're in trouble, we need to do something? No, because that's not what brutal colonial powers and ruling elite lunatics do. They say, how dare you ask those questions, peasant? Oh, you should be thankful that we suffer the effrontery of your existence. Oh, and you have the nerve to come to us and say you like or don't like what we're doing, like we're supposed to ask you? I think not. You will shut up and do what you are told. And when the people say we have some questions, they say, oh, really? You're thrown off Instagram now. Perhaps you can ask your neighbor questions, but you ain't asking them on any social media platform. And then what happens? And then they say, well, okay, but, I want to learn more. Oh, you do? Well, then we're going to buy CBS and we're going to put some schlub like Barry Weiss in charge of CBS, and she will make a complete moron of herself. She'll come and we will find one of the least qualified people that we can possibly find, and we will demonstrate reality to you. The demonstration of reality when it comes to settler colonialism is this, that it clarifies politics. When you understand what's going on with Israel, once you understand what's going on with Israel, you understand how you're being had. You understand how you're being lied to, how you're being snooked, tuckered, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. Let me give you an example of that. Let me give you an example. Barry Weiss is a gay, lesbian, married to a woman from New York, neoliberal, super liberal, LGBTQ plus, latte sipping, electric car driving. She is the, what is it? Identity politics, all that kind of stuff. Wokety woke, 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 woke. That's her, which means that she hates Donald Trump, doesn't she? Because he's anti-woke. This is classic woke versus anti-woke, isn't it? She's from New York. Oh my God, Trump hates these New York liberals, and these New York liberals just hate Trump. Don't. Oh, she is the ultimate person cast as a person that should despise Donald Trump. However, what came out recently? What came out recently was this: Barry Weiss, who's now in charge of CBS, killed a 60-minute segment that would have portrayed Donald Trump in a bad light. And she killed it. But wait a minute. She hates Donald Trump, right? She's married to a woman, lesbian, Starbucks sipping, electric car loving, whatever, liberal, right? Climate change preaching, green agenda, everything that is aligned with liberalism, that's her. New York Times, former writer there, wasn't very good, but that's who she is. So she hates Donald Trump. She despises Trump. But wait a minute. Isn't it interesting that there are a lot of people at CBS are mad at her? Why? Because she acted to defend and protect Donald Trump, because she would not allow something to go through and go on air on 60 Minutes that would have shared Trump in a bad light. So what does that tell you? The whole thing's a fraud. The whole woke politics crap is a fraud when it comes to the ruling elite, who she absolutely represents now. Guess what? She's a Zionist and he's a Zionist. The rest of that Starbucks sipping, lattes, pumpkin spice flavored electric cars crap, that's for the suckers to believe. When it came down to it, she's like, okay, I'm a Zionist, he's a Zionist. And that's the real deal here. And the rest of this stuff is just to keep you poor schlups, you poor dummies fighting against each other, arguing over the latest iteration of an LGBTQ, whatever, I don't know how many letters plus flag. You're supposed to argue, did you see the latest flag? It's stupid. They added brown. What did they add brown for? Somebody pooped on a flag. You're supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say, what am I looking at a stupid flag for anyway? Why am I arguing over what colors are on a flag of a minority group they're grown people. And as long as they're grown people, what do I care what they're doing? That's their life. They're not asking me what my favorite sexual position is. And I sure ain't asking that group theirs, because I really don't want to know. Right? So my point is, I guess somebody's going to call me an anti-gay person for saying that, but I don't care. That's part of the identity politics. You can call me an anti-gay person you want to. I don't care what you call me. But my point being this, I'm making a point here. And that is the person who our political model tells us should be the most anti-Trump person in all the media is acting to protect Trump, because in reality, let me put it like this. She's supposed to be a corporate appointee. This is a corporation. She's supposed to be in charge of a corporation. She's not a corporate appointee. Now, some people may say she's a political appointee, right? I disagree. She is an ideological appointee. Her job, and she knows it well, she's paid $100 million a year to advocate for, defend, and protect Zionism. It's not CBS, it's ZBS. And they bought it and they said, Barry White. I'm thinking about some great music. Barry White had some great music. Now, I know Barry White, that's a whole different thing. But Barry Weiss, we're thinking, okay, she's coming into CBS, what she's going to do. And she's like, there's only one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to preach anti-Semitism all day long. Hey, how's the weather? It's anti-Semitic. Today, we're followed by a front. What do we got coming across tomorrow with the front, John? It's anti-Semitic tonight. We're looking for an increase of anti-Semitism in the morning, and in the afternoon, anti-Semitic. That's the weather. That's everything. That's what they're paid to do. She's paid to repeat these words, anti-Semitism, over and over and over. If it's a sports show at halftime on CBS, all right, here's the halftime show. And like a bunch of people, the marching band marches out and they spell like stand against anti-Semitism, like, and they all have Israeli flags. That's pretty much going to be if a football game is on CBS, that's pretty much what you're looking for, right? Max Mann says Barry White was absolutely fantastic. Okay, good music. That was that dude had some good music. At any rate, that's old school right there, Barry White. But bottom line, somebody says CBS fired all of the black employees except Gayle King. Of course, what did they care? They were replacing them with Zionists. And let me tell you something. If the black employees were Zionists, they wouldn't get fired. If the white employees, if I don't care what they are, if there was a Jewish employee there that wasn't the Zionist, they wouldn't get fired. They didn't hire and fire based on race. They hired and fire based on ideology, and that ideology is Zionism. See, keep in mind something. As I said, they fired the black employee. Think about that. That's still kind of viewing politics through the lens of identity. There were black employees, there were white employees. We may look at it like that. They were straight employees, they were gay employees. They were employees that spoke another language. They were employees that were communists, libertarians, Republicans. But the only thing they care is, are you pro-Zionist or are you anti-Zionist? And if you're pro-Zionist, are you pro-Zionist enough that Zionism is above all other things and all other concerns for you? If not, you're fired. It is now an ideological, it is a Zionist broadcasting service system that's purely ideological. That's all CBS is. If you want ideological stuff, turn on CBS, and all day long they'll tell you how terrible anti-Semitism is. And you know how you can fix it? By supporting Israel no matter what they do. And of course, if you say, I don't want to do that, well, then clearly you're anti-Semitic. It's just a joke. It's, and Barry White is there to do that. In fact, I would even argue this. CBS is owned by somebody really, really rich. It is not any longer a corporation. Traditionally, a corporation is there to make profit. It ain't there to make profit. It's there to brainwash you. They don't care about profit. If they cared about profit, they would bring in somebody that knew what the hell they were doing. They wouldn't bring in an ideological, mental midget. They would bring in somebody. They didn't even bring in somebody that was smart enough to hide what they were doing. I mean, like you guys or even me. Okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, they come in, Garland will give you $100 million to be a Zionist scumbag. Hey, great idea. Thanks for $100 million. I could hide it. I wouldn't just say, hey, how you doing today? And then put my own stupid self on and interview people. How amateur is that? That she comes in, takes over the network. Okay, you're in charge. What are you going to do? I think I'm going to do my own interviews. What do you think? You know what? Can you imagine when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys? What are you going to do, Jerry Jones? You're 44 years old. I think I'm going to make myself the starting quarterback. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to be the coach and the defensive coordinator. I'm going to call all the plays. And you're going to lose every game. No, I'm not, because I'm really smart. No, the fact that you are going to make yourself the quarterback shows that you're a friggin' idiot. And if you come in and you're Barry Weiss and you say, I am going to come in and do my own interviews. If you were that good, Barry Weiss, if people were clamoring for your talent, you'd already be doing the interviews. People would be standing in line. In business, they call it, what do they call it? Market insistence. The people would be standing outside. We want Barry. They'd have signs. Barry Weiss. We want Barry Weiss. When can we have the next Barry Weiss interview? But they weren't doing that, were they? No, they weren't. And so you, an intellectual firefly, and I apologize to fireflies because their brain's considerably bigger than yours, you get in and you come up with the brilliant idea that you're going to do the interviews yourself. People that have, like, they may be shills for the system, fair enough, but like at least they've been doing this for a long time. You're going to go in and you've got people that know how to do this, and your plan is, Nah, I think I'll do it myself. And then it's so stupid that you come in and you're like, all right, I'm going to do my first interview in 3, 2, 1, let's go. So tell me, how bad is anti-Semitism in this world? Well, I don't know. It is terrible, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I guess aren't we supposed to be talking about the Rose Day, the Thanksgiving Day parade? Yes, a lot of anti-Semitism in the Thanksgiving Day parade, wouldn't you say? And the person was like, I work for Macy's. I thought I was here to talk about the floats. Yes, anti-Semitic floats. That's what, look at, they're everywhere. They're floating all over. They all hate Jews. That's her. That's how stupid this woman is. Because she is an ideological implant. Nothing more, nothing less. And of course, I expect that ZBS is going to crater. I expect it will, and nothing wrong with that. It should. But the other part of it is this. She's an ideological person because, why? Because Israel is an old school, brutal settler colonial project in a multipolar world. The world has changed. Now, one may argue multinodal world. You could say nodes, points in a network, but there are still poles, and I would still argue that right now we have kind of a bipolar world, kind of, where Russia and China are one pole and the US is another pole. But there are various important nodes and almost poles like India, kingmakers, people who, if they join one side or the other, can make the difference. And India is one of those. If they join one side or the other, they can make the difference. So it's not just as easy as a bipolar world. It's still complicated and it is still developing. But my point being, it's not the kind of world where people just sit around and they look at a bunch of people slaughter men, women, and children, drop bombs on them, bomb everybody in the region, in the neighborhood, and then say we're the chosen people. Those kind of things don't really go over real well in the world that we live in today. In the United States, and these knuckle dragging apes, with my apology to apes, and the knuckle draggers in Tel Aviv are going around thinking that they can do what they did 400 years ago and nobody will notice. And they can just force their will on everybody. And they can buy up the media. They can throw people off social media programs. They can throw Brianna Joy Gray off of Instagram and nobody's going to notice. Or even worse, as fascists tend to think, I'm looking at you, Kaja Kallis, as fascists tend to think it doesn't matter. Because we will just ban you, Jacques Beau. We will just sanction you. We will just smash you like a flea. They always forget that in the end, there's more of us than there are of them. And sooner or later, it always comes down to that. Sooner or later, these people that are the people that sow the seeds of revolution, there's more of us and it's more of them. And at some point, we figure that out. As long as we don't know it, that's fine. They can get away with anything. But what happens, and I say that the time is coming, for starters in Europe, I'm convinced there'll be violence. I'm convinced that violence is coming because these people have been saying, yes, boy, Russia's going to lose this war. Oh, boy, the Ruskies, they're fighting with shovels. They're running out of missiles. They're starving and eating each other. That's my favorite. My favorite article. Larry Johnson and I just laugh over that one. Yes, the Russians are eating each other, literally, like borscht, I guess, kind of battlefield borscht. They call it. You just eat your fellow soldier, right? So they told us the Russians are eating each other. They're losing, and now they ain't losing anymore. And the Russians just doing what they do. Yeah, okay, we're losing. Fair enough. We'll be over here pounding the hell out of the Ukrainians. And at some point, you'll figure out how this thing works. And now the Europeans are like, all right, Americans, time to come in and join the fight with the Russians. And they don't understand when the Americans do. Everybody remembers my infamous video, the Samsonite option. That's what the Americans do. They exercise the Samsonite option. They always do. They're going to pack their bags and get the hell out of there. Don't forget, Americans are good at losing wars. People are like, what is America going to do? Oh my God, when they lose a war, they're going to freak out. They're going to nuke everybody. No, they're not. Americans lost plenty of wars. America's going to go, people are going to go, hey, America, you lost a war. And they're going to be, oh, again, crap. Oh, well, whatever. Let's see. Hey, look, Venezuela. They got oil. I think we can steal it. Americans always have someplace else that they can try their piracy on. So losing a war is, they don't lose because they laundered $300 billion through Ukraine Do you call that a loss? If you hit the lottery and you were able to pilfer your fair share of money through Ukraine, do you think you'd feel like you lost? Is that a loss? If that's the case, I want to lose. Give me my fair share of that pilfered money so I can lose too. Hey, what happened to Garland? Garland lost in Ukraine. Where is he now? He's on the French Riviera. Yeah, last time I saw him, he was in the Maldives floating around on his $25 million yacht. But poor bastard, he lost in Ukraine. That's how they lose. That's how the Americans lose. Meanwhile, let's face it, they soaked. Not only did they pilfer 300 billion through Ukraine, they soaked the Europeans for every stinking dime they had. And now the Europeans are like, oh my God, we don't have much money, but we got to buy gas and stuff like that. And the Americans are going, yeah, we'll be happy to sell it to you for 5 times the normal price, you suckers. Oh, by the way, that's some pretty industry you got there. I think we'll steal it from you. Move it over here. They've robbed Europe blind. They've left with the infamous barrel with suspenders on. They've left them naked with nothing, and they're laughing at them, and they're going to walk away, and the guillotines are going to come out. The guillotines, mark my word, the guillotines will come out. They have to, at any rate. But it all gets back to this. The Ukraine was the settler, the colonial powers saying we still have the ability to use proxy forces to take down anybody we want, and we'll use a proxy force to take down Russia. So that was shall we say, a learning event for them. Not Russia. You ain't proxy forcing your way through to Moscow, pal. Number one. And with the Israelis, it was, we can still do the brutal settler colonial stuff, but even if our people don't like it, we can smack them down and tell them like it or lump it, that we still own the media. We still own the social media. We still own everything. We can tell them, you will do what we say. That if the American people will not accept our brutal settler colonialism, all we got to do is smack them down in line. And I think there will be a price to pay for that also. There will be a price to pay for that. So that's my point, that in a multipolar, modern, information exchanging world, the brutality of settler colonialism will not be tolerated by the masses in a way that it would be when you could either keep them ignorant or keep them of what you were doing, or keep them ignorant where they couldn't read and write anyway. So how could they couldn't read. If you wrote an article in a newspaper about what you were doing, they couldn't read it. Because they were so ignorant they couldn't read and write. That's why you think only the preachers could read and write, that only the priests were allowed to read and write. Why do you think that slaves were never allowed to read? It was illegal to have a slave to read. Why peasants in England and everywhere they had peasants were kept ignorant? Because once people understand what's going on, they start having expectations of some level of fairness. They start saying, I want to say in how things work. You don't get that. That's why I want to wipe out the working class. At any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. A lot of fun here, running off at the mouth. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you understood it. Maybe not. I don't know. I want to thank all my Patreon people. If you can be a Patreon person, I would be highly appreciated. If you can use either PayPal or buy me a coffee or Cash App or something, I would appreciate anything you can do to help the channel keep going. And of course, there's my P.O. Box, P.O. Box 32, Glen Burnie, Maryland, 21061. If you have the opportunity to, whether it's a donation or just a letter, Christmas cards, I've gotten, or whatever you are in a mind to send, maybe not a letter bomb, okay, that wouldn't be so good, but you get the picture. If you want to snail mail me, there's my P.O. Box. Thanks a lot, everybody. And thanks a lot, Camilla and Myra and all of the people, and of course Chicken Patty, who is in fact the philosophical heart and soul of this channel. You all have a wonderful day. The most important thing you can do is what? I can't hear you. Share this on all your social media platforms.